See, I knew part of that institution where she'd been was given over to young men, some of them well off. And I thought, if she favours him, where am I? Where's all I've worked for? Hoping, I must confess to the selfishness, that she wouldn't favour him. I set myself to find out, and at length I was party to a conversation betwixt them in the open air, quite by chance, unseen by them, leaning behind a fir tree. It was a moving conversation for all of the three parties concerned. I knew every syllable that passed between them, my eyes being as quick at deaf and dumb talk as my ears with the words of people that can speak. He was going to China for 5 years as a clerk in a merchant's house, like his father had been before him. He was situated to be able to keep a wife. He wanted her to marry him and go with him. She says no. Did she love him? Oh yes, she loved him dearly, dearly, but she could never disappoint her good, kind, noble, and I don't know what all, father, meaning me, the Chief Jack, and she'd stay with him, heaven bless him, though it would break her heart. And she cried most bitterly, and that made up my mind. Before my mind was made up, I felt that bitter towards Bickerson, but it was just as well that he got his legacy put him down. But once, without him, I'd never have known about this strange young man, but once I knew she loved him. Once I'd seen her weep for him, it was a different matter, and I shook myself together to do the right thing by all. She'd gone by this time. It took me some minutes to shake myself together. And the young man was leaning against one of the fir trees, of which there was a cluster, with his head on his arm. I touched him on the shoulder. He turned round, and he says in our deaf and dumb language, "Do not be angry. Come along with me." I left him at the foot of the library cart steps, and I went up alone. She was drying her eyes. "You've been crying," says I. "A headache. Not a heartache. Dr. Marigold must prescribe for that headache." With a forced smile, she picked up my little book of prescriptions, but seeing me keep still and earnest, she softly laid it down again, and her eyes was very attentive. "The prescription ain't there, Sophie." "Where is it?" "Yeah." I brought a young husband in. I put her hand in his, and my only further words were, "Dr. Marigold's last prescription to be taken for life," and I voted when the wedding come off. I gave the wedding breakfast for 4 in the library cart. The gentleman had the care of her for those 2 years. Her young husband. We had pigeon pie, a leg of pickled pork, a couple of fowls and suitable garden stuff, and the best of drinks. A gin. All our jokes told, the whole thing went off like a skyrocket. In the course of the celebrations, I made known to Sophie that I'd keep her books for her just as they were till she came back to claim them, and that I'd use the library card as my living card when not upon the road. So she went off to China for the 5 years with her young husband, and that was a part insoluble and heavy. Sophie wrote me many letters, and I wrote her many letters. At the end of the first year, come one in an unsteady hand. "Dearest father, about a week ago, I had a little darling baby daughter. But I'm so well that they've let me write these few words to you. Dearest and best father, I hope my child may not be deaf and dumb, but as yet I do not know." When I wrote back, eventually I hinted the question, but she never answered it, and I thought it was a sad question, and I didn't repeat it. For a long time our letters were regular, but then they got irregular. So her husband moved to another station, and of course I was also. We were in one another's hearts, letters or no letters. 5 years, odd months gone by. I was in Middlesex, Uxbridge, 20 miles from London, clean out of stock. So I jogged up to London with the old horse, light and easy, to buy another set of goods all round and sell them again and get the money, and to have my Christmas Eve dinner alone in the library cart. I'm a neat-handed cookery. I'll tell you what I knocked up for my Christmas Eve supper. I cooked up a little beefsteak pudding for one, with a couple of oysters and half a dozen mushrooms thrown in. It's a pudding to put a man in a good humour with everything but the bottom button of his waistcoat. Having relished that dinner and cleared away, I settled down by the fire in the library cart. I turned the lamp down low, and I watched the lamp and the firelight played on Sophie's books. Sophie's books so brought up Sophie's self that I saw her touching face quite clearly as I nodded off to sleep by the library fire. Maybe that's the reason why Sophie, with a little deaf and dumb child in her arms, seemed to stand by me all the way through my nap. Even when I woke with a start, it was as if she disappeared the instant before. But it was a real sound that had woken me. The sound of a child's footsteps coming clambering up the steps. That sound had once been so familiar to me, for a minute I thought I was going to see a little ghost. But the outer handle turned and the door opened and a real child peeped in. A bright, comely girl with big, dark eyes looking full at me. She took off a little mite of a straw hat, and a quantity of curls fell about her face. She opened her pretty lips and she said, "Grandfather." Oh my God! She could speak. In a minute, Sophie was round my neck as well as the child. Her husband was gripping my arm with his face hid, and I don't know how long it didn't take us to get over it. And when we did get over it, and I saw the child so bright and quick and eager, talking to her mother in the very signs that I first taught her mother. The happy and yet pitying tears came rolling down my face. They did. They did.